Foolio's killers were just found dead in prison. Only days after being sentenced, and now all fingers are pointing at law enforcement over how the case was handled.
I haven't seen more thorough policing than that. That almost leads me to believe that maybe the feds lent a hand, or some assets or resources, or maybe that they got a bigger...
The case moved too fast, and now, with 2 suspects permanently silenced, people are asking the real question. Who wanted them gone? Why? Let's break it down. The Foolio 5 and the Florida bloodbath. They thought it was over, just days after being sentenced for the ruthless, premeditated murder of Jacksonville rapper Julio Foolio. 2 of his alleged killers were found dead in prison. And here's the kicker. Rumors are swirling that this wasn't just random prison violence. This was payback calculated, carried out, and possibly even covered up by those behind the scenes who was supposed to keep them alive for trial. And what's worse, the most shocking part of this story hasn't even come out yet. But we'll get to that, because if you think Foolio's death was just another tragic chapter in gang violence, if you think this is just another case of street beef gone too far, you're missing the point. This was never just about one rapper. This was about revenge. This was about power. And this was about a justice system that's starting to look less like a courtroom and more like a gladiator arena. So how did it spiral? This violently, this quickly? How did 5 people, including a pregnant woman, end up charged in a murder that shocked the entire state of Florida, only for 2 of them to be eliminated before they could even file an appeal? Let's rewind this disaster. His name lit up diss tracks, street beefs, and online rumors. But to his fancy, he was more than a provocateur. He was a survivor, a raw talent who dodged death multiple times. Until June 23rd, when the final chapter was written in a Tampa hotel parking lot home to suites near USF .31 bullets. And as wild as that sounds, it wasn't even the beginning. Police say 5 individuals drove 3 hours from Jacksonville to Tampa with one goal: kill Foolio. They tracked his every move as he club hopped for his birthday celebration. The suspects: Rashard Murphy, 30, Dave Murphy, 27, Isaiah Chance, 21, Elisa Andrews, 21, yes, the pregnant woman, Sean Garrett, 18. These weren't career hitmen. They were kids, mostly under 25, more ambition than sense. And once the shots rang out, the evidence poured in fast. Surveillance. Footage, check. Phone logs, check. Ring camera footage showing the suspects packing weapons and planning the hit like it was a music video. Check. This case had more receipts than an IRS audit, according to Tampa police. The suspects waited across the street from the hotel when Foolio pulled in. They didn't rush, they didn't hesitate, they executed. And when it was over, Foolio was gone dead in the front passenger seat of a vehicle, riddled with rifle and handgun fire. And then get this, they celebrated.
And then Davion's texted his thirst has been quenched. And let's go pop a bottle of Don Julio when we get back to Jacksonville. So it's like, I don't know, bro. If you're looking at candidates to fry, like that would be the one, right? Like if you wanted to, okay, we have a death penalty, who deserves it? Like that. I don't know. I would think it would be them.
They celebrated. They popped bottles. They posted about it. They allegedly laughed in private. Deemed like it was some kind of drill rapper scorecard. And now, 2 of them are dead before they even made it to the full sentencing phase. This wasn't just a trial. This was a ticking clock. The female suspect, Elisa Andrews, didn't even try to run. She cooperated almost immediately, giving authorities damning information, including evidence that her phone had tracked Foolio's location throughout every party and club he visited that night. She didn't pull the trigger, but according to police, she helped make the shot possible.
Well, last time we did an interview, Foolio had just gotten killed. Now, most of the people are caught. The girl that gave their location, she's cooperating.
She shared their location. She's cooperating. Let that sink in. A 21-year-old pregnant woman is now facing life in prison or worse because she was texting Foolio's location to her boyfriend and his crew. And guess what she's probably going to do? She's going to flip Dot, according to court filings. She's the only one who didn't waive her right to a speedy trial, something legal analysts see as a strategic move to lock in a plea deal and save herself from a life sentence, or even the needle. Even Boosie chimed in, claiming the cops involved were laughing about Foolio's death and that the whole situation reeked of bias and injustice. But it gets worse. Rasho Murphy, one of the alleged triggermen, purportedly tried to represent himself in court, and this wasn't traffic court, this was death penalty court. A case where the outcome could literally be lethal injection, yet he thought he could outsmart the legal system. Spoiler alert, he couldn't. As reported by Fox 13, Rashard Murphy is now one of the 2 suspects found dead in prison under unclear circumstances. So now, the questions start to pile up. Was it prison justice? Was it retaliation? Was it connected to Foolio's gang ties? Or was it something darker, something inside the system? Because here's what we do know. The Florida Department of Corrections isn't exactly known for transparency. Lowell Correctional, institution where Elisa Andrews may serve her time, has long been under fire for violence between inmates, assaults by staff, and a culture of fear that goes far beyond just the inmates.
She's gonna have her baby in jail. That baby will be taken away from her, and she'll have to serve the rest of her time. And she's going to do her very best to snitch as hard as possible to minimize her time in that jail so she can get with her newborn baby. Which
and I'm gonna be honest too, like she's most likely still gonna get time. They're gonna send her to Lowell CI. And Lowell CI is a f***ed spot. Like you got getting bucked in there. So it's like, you're like a famous rat.
As for the shooters, they were sent to Florida State Prison facility with a dark history. Past scandals there include guards charged with murder, inmates dying under suspicious circumstances, and cover-ups that would make a Netflix look tame. This is the kind of place where the system eats its own.
That's his final. He's a dumb mother because he was going on one of those like little chat things online, talking, saying I'm gonna pull up, I'm gonna do this, and the whole time he was in Jacksonville. Like he never left.
This man plotted an assassination, committed murder, and then stayed in the very city he knew the cops would search first. They called them the Foolio 5, but now it's down to 3, and there's already blood on the floor before the trial even began. And just when you thought this case couldn't get any messier, just when it seemed like the system finally had the Foolio 5 in custody, everything starts to fall apart. Let's talk about Dave Murphy. He was the last to be caught, but not because he was smart, not because he skipped town, covered his tracks, or hid out in South America. No, this man stayed right in Jacksonville, posting reckless messages on anonymous chat apps. He openly mocked the very people who were hunting him down. One message literally dared them to pull up. Another implied he was untouchable, and that's how they got him.
So they just arrested the final suspect in Foolio's murder.
Right.
He was on the run for 6 months. And there's a photo that we'll show right now. He's actually like smiling.
Yeah.
You know, after they cuff him up. I guess, I don't know, he wants to act tough with his last
Yeah, that's his
freedom.
final hoorah before it's honey buns and noodles for ever. That's his final. He's a dumb mother.
Devon never left the area. Authorities didn't need advanced tracking. Technology to find him his own arrogance gave him away. This wasn't a man afraid of prison. This was a man chasing clout. Until the bars slammed shut behind him, but it's what Devon did before he got caught that may explain what happened after. Remember this name, Spaz. Spaz was allegedly Devon's brother, and he was reportedly killed in a previous gang-related shooting involving one of Foolio's close associates. Foolio didn't just respond with lyrics, he responded with outright desecration. There are videos of Foolio's affiliates literally urinating on Spaz's grave, and Foolio himself reportedly referenced that in his music. Mocking the dead with a kind of venom most rappers wouldn't dare put on wax, Mob James even laid out the entire situation, explaining the clear motive. So when Devon and Rashard, Allegedly, pulled the trigger on Foolio in that Tampa hotel parking lots, and believe it, was deeply personal. This wasn't just about a diss track. This was about blood, and that's where the story takes a darker turn, one that few are willing to discuss publicly, because the very people who laughed at Foolio's murder, the same people who ignored his mother's cries for justice, are now the ones investigating how 2 of his alleged killers mysteriously died in custody. Let's rewind. When Foolio was killed, multiple vehicles were tailing him. Investigators used surveillance footage, license plate readers, and even cash. app transactions to track down everyone involved. One of the shooters allegedly used a Cash App card to book the hotel. Another was seen loading cast-iron rifles into a car captured in crystal-clear footage thanks to Tesla's built-in cameras. And Ring doorbell surveillance.
You got the Teslas that are acting like sentries with 360 camera.
Yeah.
It's the clearest camera ever, 4K.
This was
This was a digital crime scene from start to finish. They didn't just get caught, they left behind a breadcrumb trail of stupidity that prosecutors are now feasting on. But why does that matter? Because when inmates like Richard and Sean died behind bars, the prison system refused to give a straight answer. At first, it was chalked up to inmate violence, but anonymous insiders suggest otherwise. Word had reportedly spread in the yard that Foolio's connections ran deeper than just music, that people inside the prison knew exactly who the shooters were in, decided to handle it the old-fashioned way. One anonymous story claims Richard was cornered in a hallway, brutally assaulted, and then left without medical aid for hours. Another suggests Sean was taken out in his sleep. These reports remain unconfirmed. But if even a part of them is true, the bigger story isn't just that they're about who let it happen. Because if the Florida Department of Corrections is turning a blind eye, then this isn't just a story about gang wars, it's a story about state-sanctioned revenge. Just listen to what 1090 Jake said about the Florida prison system.
And low CI is a f***ed up spot. Like, you got getting bucked in there. So it's like, you're like a famous rat. You know what I mean? But they more so be going after the girls that be killing their own kids and like crazy like that. But low CI, the Florida Department of Corrections doesn't f*** off. It's very much like, it's war. You know what I mean? You got COs killing people, inmates killing people. So what they have to look forward to isn't anything nice. And then obviously if any of them get death, that's a whole nother different story.
This isn't hypothetical, it's a documented pattern. Florida's correctional institutions are infamous for excessive force, inmate deaths, and widespread abuse. And whether you believe it or not, the evidence suggests this was never just about justice, it was about erasure. They didn't want a trial, they wanted silence. And they got it. 2 suspects, silenced forever. A system that delivers death before the verdict. By the time the second body hit the prison floor, no one was asking, how did this happen? They were asking, how did anyone not see this coming? Florida's correctional system is no stranger to scandal, but the speed and silence surrounding the deaths of Richard Murphy and Sean Gaywright, 2 of the alleged killers of Foolio, sparked whispers even inside law enforcement. According to insiders, there were multiple red flags, fights isolation, requests written, complaints all of them ignored. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people wanted them dead, and in Florida State Prison, that can be arranged. Let's rewind. Richard Murphy was charged with first-degree premeditated murder, just like the others. But his case quickly went off the rails. According to court documents obtained by local media, Richard requested to fire his attorney and represent himself. Multiple outlets reported that his behavior raised serious concerns. He wasn't just defiant, he was clearly frustrated. He claimed he couldn't communicate with his lawyer. He felt like he was being treated as if already convicted.
I think this guy's nuts. I think that's why. I mean, he wants to defend himself, which is insane in a death penalty case. And then he actually has said that he may use an insanity defense, which also is insane in itself when the facts show otherwise, that these guys had meticulous planning and attempts to cover up crime. And when you have that, good luck in getting an insanity defense, because to sustain an insanity defense, you have to have an established medical condition, and you have to not know the difference between right and wrong. But when you meticulously plan and then try to cover up your tracks, that shows you knew the difference between right and wrong. It shows you knew what you did was illegal. And when you want to just try to put forward an insanity defense as your own lawyer, it doubles the level of difficulty.
And then Richard actually said he might use an insanity defense, which, in itself, sounds insane, especially given the facts. The evidence shows meticulous planning and clear attempts to cover up the crime. And when that's the case, good luck making an insanity plea stick to sustain an insanity defense. A defendant must have a documented medical condition and be unable to distinguish between right and wrong. But if you meticulously plan and then try to cover your tracks, it shows you knew what you were doing was wrong. It proves you understood. The land broke it anyway, trying to argue insanity. While acting as your own lawyer only doubles the difficulty. And then came the letter Richard wrote to the judge, claiming deputies at the jail were blocking his mail, restricting his phone calls, and preventing him from preparing his defense. This wasn't a man posturing. This was a man unraveling. And when you mix desperation with reputation in a Florida prison, you're looking at a recipe for violence. We've seen it before. In 2012, Darren Rainey, a mentally ill inmate at Dade Correctional Institution, was boiled alive in a scalding shower by corrections officers. His skin literally peeled off in sheets. No, one was charged for years. In 2015, multiple guards at Franklin Correctional Institution were exposed as members of a white supremacist gang operating inside the prison in 2020. A whistleblower revealed that guards at Lowell Correctional Institution, the same facility where Elisa Andrews may be sent, were coercing female inmates into degrading acts under threats of violence. So, when two young black men, freshly charged with killing a famous rapper, end up dead within days of sentencing, that doesn't sound like bad luck. That sounds like a pattern, especially when you factor in the gang affiliations involved. Let's be clear, Foolio wasn't just a rapper. He was the face of a crew called 6 Block. His rivals, ATK and 1200, the same groups law enforcement believes coordinated his murder in retaliation for past killings. But this feud goes back years.
This is something in Jacksonville that is very well known. These videos, both by our victim as well as by the rival gangs, are posted immediately. It's in the public domain, and it details this long-standing feud.
This feud ran deep. Foolio's own lyrics reference multiple real-life deaths, and his music videos often featured disrespect toward his rivals' graves. In one of the most infamous incidents, his affiliates defiled the grave of a rival believed to be Spaz, the brother of Richard and Davon Murphy.
That's the same guy who, after the murder, allegedly sent out a text, "I'm coming home, my thirst is finally quenched." Like, it was a mission for him. So, I mean, if we're talking about motive, that's classic get back, right? Hey, his people did something to my brother. They kept laughing about it. They've desecrated his gravesite. This is a rapper who's been known to make videos at gravesite or laugh at the dead. Now we get to laugh.
That text wasn't just a flex, it was a blood oath fulfilled. So what happens when that kind of beef spills into a Florida prison, where gangs, guards, and politics collide? It turns into a war zone. 1090 Jake, a former inmate turned prison reform advocate, has described Florida's jails and prisons as nothing short of urban battlegrounds. He says fights are expected. Extortion is routine, and murder isn't an outlier, it's a strategy. So when Sean Guy, only 18 years old, reportedly died in custody, no one flinched. An 18-year-old charged with murder, facing the death penalty, now gone. Dead before a judge or jury ever heard his side of the story. Did he even fully understand the consequences of what he had signed up for? Because here's what people forget. Most of the Foolio 5 were barely out of their teens. They weren't calculating. Hardened criminals, they were digital-age soldiers in a war they didn't start. And now, 2 of them are dead. Talking about the role the system played. Why is there more outrage over a diss track than there is over multiple deaths in custody? Because it's easier to paint these young men as monsters than it is to ask the hard questions. Why were higher-risk defendants housed in general population just days after sentencing? Why were written complaints from Richard ignored? Who approved the transfer of gang-affiliated inmates into rival pods? And more chillingly, who benefits from their silence? Because dead men don't testify, dead men don't cut deals, dead men don't expose the deeper layers of a war that may stretch into law enforcement and politics. And trust, this war is deeper than rap. Let's talk about how it all came to a head. That night in Tampa, Foolio was in town celebrating his birthday, documenting every move on Instagram, clubs, parties, and eventually the Home to Suites Hotel, where he would spend the
Jones was in town celebrating his birthday and posted on his social media his locations several times throughout that night. Surveillance video was critical in this investigation, as suspects were seen on video following Jones from location to location.
Unbeknownst to him, Foolio was being followed. A team of 5 traveling in 2 cars, armed with multiple weapons, drove 3 hours from Jacksonville on a mission fueled by vengeance. The girl, Elisa, reportedly tracked Foolio's movements through text messages. Her phones, GPS logs, and social media activity tied her directly to the trail. They knew when he was at the Airbnb. They knew the exact moment he arrived in Tampa. They followed him to each club, each stop panned, then they waited. Foolio didn't die instantly, but he never stood a chance. His body was found slumped in the front seat, riddled with bullets. 3 other people were wounded. None of them were the target. But here's what should truly freeze you. Every single step of the murder was caught on camera.
They were caught on license plate cameras. He used his mama's car. His mama said, I had that car and my son had
My
it.
son had it. Surveillance footage. License plate readers, .ring doorbells. Phone logs, .cash app. Receipts.
They found bullets in that kid's house. They found one of the murder weapons. They found bullets matching from the shooting scene. This kid kept collectibles from the case, like mad inside of his
Well,
house.
it's not like they're gonna get off for this.
No, they got so much evidence against them. Like when you go through it, you can pretty much just, all right, pick a prison. Where do y'all want to go? But it's just not. You can't even come up with a defense.
My son had it. Surveillance footage were cooked from the moment they pulled the trigger. But the system didn't wait for a verdict. It made its own judgment. It played executioner, and now there are only 3 left. A pregnant woman, a delusional fugitive who thought Instagram DMIs made him invincible, and a man clinging to an insanity defense. As the judge prepares for a death penalty trial, this is beyond hip-hop. This is a death spiral. And the most disturbing part, nobody wins. Foolio is dead too. Suspects are dead. One woman may give birth in shackles, and the rest are staring down decades or death behind bars. But this isn't just about this case. Zoom out, and you'll see the pattern playing out across the country. Drill rappers murdered in coordinated hits, retaliation killings celebrated. Like viral TikTokons, young black men funneled into a justice system more invested in spectacle than solutions. The question isn't just who did it's who allowed it to allow these young men to be radicalized into a digital war, where death is currency and Instagram clout is king, who let the prison system become the second executioner. And what happens when the next rapper dies? Will we keep acting shocked? Or will we finally admit the truth? This isn't just music anymore. This is a meat grinder, and unless something changes, it's only going to get worse. This is execution before the verdict by the time the dust settled. The body count wasn't just tragic, it was calculated. Julio Foolio, dead at 26. Sean Gaywright, dead at 18. Richard Murphy, dead before a single appeal. Could be filed, and now. The state of Florida is preparing to do something it hasn't done in decades. Seek multiple death penalties in a rap-related case. Let that sink in. In the wake of Foolio's execution-style killing, Florida prosecutors are pushing for capital punishment against at least 2 of the remaining suspects. Davon Murphy, the same man who laughed in live chats about staying in Jacksonville like he was untouchable land. Elisa Andrews, the pregnant woman who allegedly tracked Foolio's every move the night he was killed. She could be facing life in prison. But here's the question nobody's asking out loud. Is this justice or just vengeance with paperwork? Let's talk about what's really happening behind the scenes. In April, State Attorney Susan Lopez held a press conference flanked by local police and federal agents. The tone wasn't, T. Sombrit was proud. 5 people charged, multiple guns recovered, dozens of phone logs and GPS pings submitted as evidence. You'd think they'd just dismantled a cartel, and in a way, they did. Because this isn't just about one murder. It's about a blood feud stretching across Jacksonville, a tit-for-tat war between rap collectives, ATK, 1200, and 6 Block. And if the courts succeed in issuing death sentences, it will mark the first time this feud is punished at the highest level. But ask any defense attorney or prison rights advocate, and they'll tell you the evidence may be overwhelming, but the motives are far more complicated than the headlines suggest. Take Rashard Murphy, for example. One of the men charged and later found dead was reportedly building an insanity. Defense.court documents show he tried to fire his attorney, filed handwritten motions, and alleged he was being abused and blocked from preparing for trial by jail staff. Legal analyst Dave Ehrenberg explained that while Murphy may have been mentally unstable, his condition likely didn't meet the legal standard for insanity. Phone logs, Cash App receipts.
Yeah, that's why he may have a screw loose, but it doesn't mean he satisfies the requirements of an insanity defense.
But now Murphy is
gone, and the trial will proceed without him. That's not a win, it's a warning. Florida's prisons are chewing people up before the system even has a chance to convict them. And this isn't an isolated case. Human rights organizations have documented dozens of similar instances. Pre-trial defendants dying under suspicious conditions, mentally ill inmates thrown into general population high-profile, suspects denied protective custody and internal investigations. That disappear without any accountability. It raises a disturbing question. Are we sentencing people or setting them up? Let's pivot back to Elisa Andrews. She was 21 years old, pregnant, and not accused of firing a single bullet. But under Florida's felony murder laws, just being part of the plot makes her equally culpable. And here's the problem. Andrews is likely cooperating. Prosecutors haven't confirmed it publicly, but insiders say she's been talking since day one.
Alicia, the girl, she gave an interview with police right when she got picked up. So she's already spoke to them and confirmed, oh yeah, we were here.
Her phone was directly tied to Foolio's movements across Tampa, and her decision not to waive her right to a speedy trial like the other. Defendants suggests she's trying to fast-track a plea deal.
And then they just recently did it where the girl isn't waiving her right to a speedy trial, and they believe she's gonna cooperate.
Right. Actually, one of my members, Kilcon RL, mentioned that. He said Alicia Andrews, who's the girl, who's pregnant, she asked for a speedy trial, but the other three waived.
Right.
Waived that. So yeah, I guess that means she's cooperating.
So now the question becomes, what is she saying?
What is Elisa saying? And more importantly, who could be dragged into this next? According to multiple sources, including an interview from DJ Foolio's murder, may have been retaliation for the death of Spaz, the brother of one of the alleged shooters. Not only was Spaz allegedly killed by someone in Foolio's circle, but there are now viral videos showing someone urinating on Spaz's grave. Grotesque, public act of disrespect. That kind of grief turns into rage. That rage turned into a mission. Foolio's death wasn't spontaneous. It was planned, documented, and possibly even sanctioned by deeper elements within the local gang hierarchy. Which leads us to an even bigger bombshell. There are whispers of a sealed indictment on the horizon. Multiple criminal justice insiders have claimed that federal agencies were involved in the investigation, particularly in handling digital evidence. They subpoenaed. Cash App records pulled phone logs from power-straced vehicles across multiple counties. That level of involvement hints at something much larger, a pending RICO case. Which means this isn't over. The trial may be focused on the Foolio 5, but if Elisa Andrews starts naming names, if Davon Murphy decides to flip to save himself, and if the feds already have recordings, we could be looking at a citywide gang sweep, one that could rival what we saw with YSL in Atlanta. Only this time, there may be more bodies than courtrooms. Can handle and through it, all through the clout chasing, the courtroom drama, the conspiracy theories. One fact remains. Dulio Foolio is gone. A man who used music to tell his story, who lived and died by the rules of the street, who made enemies by mocking the dead, and paid for it with his life. Foolio was controversial, but he didn't deserve to die like that, and neither did to teenagers who never even got their day in court. So what now? Will Davon Murphy survive trial? Will Elisa Andrews give up the names prosecutors want? Will Florida really send young defendants to death row in the first rap-related gang case of its kind? And what about the next generation? The rappers, kids, and fans watching this unfold? What message are they getting? That snitching gets you killed, that silence gets you life, that even the justice system won't wait for a verdict. It's a loop, and right now we're all caught in it Because this is no longer about who pulled the trigger. It's about the system that handed them the gun. To come, we've lined up even more breakthrough stories. Just click one of the suggested videos to keep watching.